And welcome back, fellow dreamers. This is part two of my Dreamers Tutorials series. Excuse me, Dreams Tutorials series. In part one, we watched Start Dreaming and Logic tutorial, and now we're on Gameplay tutorial. We still have animation, audio, art to go. And let's get right back into it. Connectors and Physics tutorial. Tweaking, attaching, connecting. I'm going to restart it because I already went through all these tutorials once. This is the second time.
This tutorial is all about connectors. Connectors join objects together in a way that lets them move, like the hinge on a door or a ball on a string, for example. Just what we need to help Connie get to her pal Cuthbert. What would he do without her? First things first, though, we need to be precise when using connectors. So let's turn on the Grid Snap guide. That way, everything will line up properly. So, go to the assembly menu, open the guide section.
Remember to hit square.
And select the grid icon with the X button. Now that Grid Snap is on, any objects you move and tools you use will snap in line with the grid in the scene. You can adjust how fine the grid is by using the plus and minus icons on the button. But for this tutorial, it's best if you leave the grid size at 1. Now, Connie, let's see how to sort Cuthbert out. The best way to find out what needs connecting is to play the scene and see for ourselves. But instead of switching over to play mode, we can test the scene in edit mode by clicking R3. Well, this is odd. The bridge has fallen down, but the second platform is still floating in place. How can one object float and another one fall? Click L3 to rewind the scene. Let's check the bridge's tweak menu. Remember that tweak menus let us see and edit the settings of things in edit mode. Hover your imp over the bridge, then hold L1 and press square to open its tweak menu.
L1 square.
Tweak menus differ depending on what sort of object you're tweaking. The bridge is a sculpture. Sculptures are pretty complex things. Their tweak menus have lots of pages. To switch pages, use your imp to select the different tabs at the top of the menu. Maybe we'll find something on the physical properties
What's up, Kyle?
that'll tell us why the bridge falls down.
How you doing, buddy?
Its icon is a Newton's cradle.
Fucking
It's like
gypsy.
one of those desk ornaments where the little metal balls bash into each other. Select it with X.
Oops. Shit.
This page contains the sculpture's physical properties and attributes. There's a lot of buttons and sliders here, but the one we're interested in is the top one.
Movable.
Aha, I thought so.
If we turn movable
Someone's only
off,
switched on the movable option.
now it won't
Okay,
drop.
I admit it, it was me. Well, it wouldn't be much of an adventure if Connie could just stroll across the bridge, would it? Making the bridge or any sculpture movable means it becomes physical. That means that forces in the scene, like collisions, the imp, or in this case gravity, can move it. Luckily, we can stop it from falling down by adding a connector to it. Which is exactly what we'll do in the next step, once you're ready to move on.
Let's move on. Here we go.
So, all we need to keep the bridge from falling
I'm very
is
good.
a piece of string.
Better?
Not just any piece of string though, what we in the dream shaping business call a string connector. We'll need to attach the other end to something unmovable, like the blue cylinder above the bridge. Start by moving your imp with the left and right sticks until you can see the top of the bridge and the bottom of the blue cylinder. Make sure your scene is rewound. Click L3 if it isn't. Now open the assembly menu and select the 3 connected squares to open the gadgets menu. Look for the button with the joint icon, which will take you to the connectors submenu.
Connectors. Boom.
You can move the menu with your imp by grabbing it with R2. Select the icon with the two circles connected by a wavy line, and you'll see the string connector appears on the tip of your imp. Now let's get connecting. You should always make the first connection to the object that won't move. We call this the parent object.
Parent object?
In this case, it's this blue cylinder, but it could be something else, like the frame of a door. See the yellow dot on the cylinder? I put that there to show the best place to make your connection. So hover over it, then press R2 or X to connect the string.
Yep, we did that already.
The grid snap guide will help you line it up exactly with the yellow spot. When you move your imp now, you'll notice it's tethered to the cylinder and has a blue gizmo attached to it. Now let's stretch that string to the bridge, all the way down to the blue dot. The blue end of the connector joins to the movable object, which we call the child object.
Check it out, we connected that
Hover over
to that.
the blue dot. See how the grid snaps it in line.
Yep, we still got
So
grid
let's
on.
connect the string there with R2 or X. If your bridge isn't in line, just make sure that your scene is rewound. Now that the blue gizmo is connected, you can press circle to unequip the string connector from your imp. And there you have it. The cylinder and the bridge are connected. Click R3 to play the scene and check that it's working.
It's working. You can even go in here and check.
It looks a bit wobbly, but nothing Connie can't handle. Switch over to play mode and have a go.
I love how this game has just physics and stuff, so you know, we just tethered that rope to this little thing and now it's got its own physics.
When you can get Connie across the bridge to the second platform, return to edit mode and rewind the scene with L3.
Yeah. So as my friend Grim Phoenix Gaming just pointed out, this game is a lot like Little Big Planet. And if you didn't know, this is the creators of Little Big Planet. Oh shit! That's what happens when I'm distracted. But it's fine. We're just going to continue.
So, all we need to keep the bridge from falling is a piece of string.
Okay, so we
Not
already did
just
this.
any piece of string,
So we're
though.
going to
What we in the dream shaping business call a string connector.
Oh, we already have it. Okay.
We'll need
So
to
we can just
attach
skip
that.
forward and just move on. Oh, don't say sorry.
Time to get Connie over to the third
But yeah,
platform.
it's more like a tutorial story.
The small
But
pink platform
happy
and
to
the blue
chat.
step aren't much use to her right now. But if we make the platform move backwards and forwards, she can hop on it and cross over. To do that, we'll need a connector called a piston.
Piston.
Go to the assembly menu, then the gadgets menu.
Gadgets.
You'll find the piston in the connectors section.
Connectors.
It's all the way over on the left and looks like, well, a piston.
Piston
Now
right
that
here.
it's equipped on your imp, you can start connecting.
Remember to start on the parent object.
Press R2 or X to join it to the blue step, which is the stationary parent object. I put a yellow dot on it to show you the best place to connect to it. Next, connect the blue end to the child object, the floating platform. See how
Parent
grid
to
snap
child.
keeps the joint perfectly straight.
I mean, I turned off grid snap. We'll turn it back on.
Hover
Whatever.
over the blue dot, then press R2 or X. Remember, the child object is the part that needs to be able to move. So when you join a connector to its child object, that object will automatically become movable. When you've placed the piston, press circle to unequip the piston connector. Click R3 to test the connector. That's more like it.
Too fast.
The piston is now moving the platform back and forth. Rewind the scene with L3. Connie might be a bit put out jumping on that.
Let
Let's
it go.
calm the piston down a bit. We'll need to open the piston's tweak menu. So hover anywhere over it, hold L1 and press square. If the tweak menu blocks your view of the piston, you can grab it and move it with R2. Okay, This white gizmo shows the maximum length and speed of the piston. You can change that speed by adjusting the slider with the clock icon. That shows you the
Right here?
cycles per minute.
It's at 60 right now.
Grab the slider by holding X over it with your imp and reduce the value now. The further to the left you move, the faster the number will change. It doesn't need to be exact. Somewhere around 15 should do it. But if you want to get a more precise number, you can adjust the slider with the up and down directional buttons instead.
Up and down on the D-pad, it can do little...
Notice how it's slowed down now. Click R3 to see it moving the platform.
That's better.
When you're happy with the speed, close the tweak menu with the close button or use L1 and circle. Then rewind the scene with L3.
Left click. Did it.
Time to switch over to play mode.
Okay.
And test out the scene so far.
Let's go to play mode.
Make sure the platform isn't moving too fast for Connie to jump on. You can
Much
always
better.
go back to edit mode and tweak the piston until you're happy with it. Once Connie has made it all the way across, rewind the scene in edit mode and move on to the next step.
Left click to rewind, and then we're going to go to the next step.
Alright, there's just one more gap for Connie to cross, and we have a plank and a step we can attach it to. For the plank to drop down, we'll need it to pivot like a hinge, which means we'll need to use a bolt connector this time. Go into the connectors section in the assembly menu
Assembly member...
and select
Gadgets.
the icon with the nut on it. That's the bolt connector.
Connectors. Bolt.
Now you can connect it just like you did with the string and the piston. And because I'm such a nice teacher, I've put some yellow and blue dots so you can see where to make the connections. They're quite close together this time, so better move in for a good view. Remember, you can use the grab cam, R1, to zoom in close.
Holding
As
R1.
always, connect the parent object first, the yellow dots.
Parents first. Hit X.
Then you can connect the child object
X.
with the blue
on the
dots.
child. Blue.
The grid snap guide will keep the bolt nice and straight, so you don't have to worry about that. Once it's all connected, you can unequip the bolt connector using the circle button. You've probably noticed there's a purple gizmo halfway along the bolt. That's the pivot around which the bolt will rotate. Click R3 and see how it's all working. Well, that's not right,
click.
is it? Oh. Looks like we need to reposition the pivot to get the plank moving how we want it. Click L3 to rewind the scene and reset the plank.
Left click. Oops.
Now go ahead and grab the purple gizmo with R2. And move it
R2.
so it's lined up alongside the blue one. You can also rotate the pivot by grabbing it with L2. So try doing that now. Keep rotating until the shaft through it lines up straight with the blue gizmo. The grid snap guide will help you line it up exactly. Once it's all lined up, switch over to play mode to test it out.
Okay, I didn't do that right.
If you've done it correctly, the plank should balance upright. Connie will need to push the plank down, unless, of course, the plank isn't long enough. Oh well, switch back over to edit mode and rewind the scene. We'll sort out the plank in the next step.
I don't think I did it right, but we're just going to continue anyway.
Edit mode and rewind the scene. To make sure Connie can reach the last platform with the plank, we could always make it longer, but that's really a whole other tutorial. Instead, let's try just restricting the bolt's movement. We can do that by giving it an angle limit. You'll need to bring up the bolt's tweak menu. So hover over any part of the bolt, hold L1, then press square.
I want it square.
You should see the Use Limits button about halfway down. Select it with X and... look at that! 3 handles have appeared. 2 pale yellow ones and a longer pale blue one.
There we go.
The yellow ones set the range of movement, which is represented by the transparent arc between them. We need to move one of those yellow handles so that it's a little left of vertical. It should look like 11 on a clock face. Now move the other yellow handle to the 3 o'clock position. If your handle doesn't line up exactly, just press triangle while you're grabbing it. This will realign the handle to the grid. The blue handle represents the position of the child object. So you need to line it up with the plank in the 12 o'clock position. Press triangle to realign the handle to the grid if necessary. You can close the tweak menu now, then head into play mode to test the scene. If everything's working as it should, Connie should be able to reach Cuthbert. And if you feel like experimenting, you can try out some other connector types. See what you can come up with. Then when you're done editing the scene, go through the door in play mode to finish this tutorial.
Let's just finish her off. Connectors and physics completed. Alright. Let's fall back. And that's it for gameplay tutorial. On to animation. And again, we've done start dreaming, logic, gameplay, onto animation. Action and possession recorders tutorial, and then next will be keyframe timelines tutorial. We're going to be dealing with using the action recorder, retaking animations, tweaking the animations, cloning animations, recording character movements, tweaking your recorded possession. Restart tutorial because I've already completed it once. Here we go.
Here you'll master the basics of recording performances in dreams. Connie wants us to make these platforms move so she can get to the exit. No need to go into play mode to see that Connie won't be able to make this jump. So how about we add a little handmade animation to get us there? We can do that using the action recorder. Action recorders are super easy to use. Stamp one in your scene and it'll record anything you move with the imp. And we mean anything. It'll even record you moving or tweaking gadgets. Let's go. Connie's excited to see what we can do. Now go to the assembly menu. If it's closed, press square to open it.
Square.
The
Square.
animate menu
Square.
has a
Square.
clapperboard icon, so open that up.
Animate.
Choose the action recorder, the icon with film and a plus sign on it.
This one right here.
You'll now have an action recorder
place it
gadget
wherever you
in your
want.
imp. Stamp it down somewhere near the floating ledge. A progress bar will appear at the top of the screen, along with a record button on the right. Your
Record
imp
button.
will turn into a red dot. This means you're ready to start recording.
Ready.
Don't worry, nothing will record until you start moving or changing things. When you're ready, grab the floating ledge above Connie with R2. Move it slowly to her using the motion sensor function or the sticks. You'll notice
Holding
the
R2.
bar starts filling up, recording your every move. Don't worry, it's not a time limit. The bar fills in as a visual indicator of something being recorded, so take your time. Let go of R2 and the recording will pause. If you want to move your view or use the grab cam, it won't be recorded. If you record while the scene is playing, idle time will also be captured by the action recorder. That's why it's important to rewind or pause your scene before recording anything. That way your action recorder only contains what you put in it. When you're finished recording, select the Stop Recording button in the context menu, or use the shortcut L1 and circle to exit the action recorder. Your IMP will return back to normal to show that you're no longer recording. Click R3 to play back your animation. Handmade animations are always a bit wobbly, but practice makes perfect. Calibrating your IMP can help when using the motion sensor function. Just hold your controller in a comfortable position, then hold the options button for a few seconds. In the next step, I'll show you how to edit a recorded animation.
Boom. Nice and easy.
Anything you record is stored by the action recorder gadget. If you hover over the floating ledge, the action recorder gadget will pulse. Select the action recorder with X, and dashed lines will appear on the objects it's animating. It'll also show the animation path. That's this dashed line. If
There it
you're
is
not
right there.
happy with your animation, redoing it is easy.
Let's redo it.
First, rewind the scene with L3.
Left click. I already did it.
Then hover over the action recorder gadget, hold L1, then press X.
L1, X.
Now we can start recording again.
Let's record
Select the retake button in the context menu to wipe
Retake.
the old animation. Now you can
Swipe
perform a new animation.
again. Even though that first one was
Move
good.
the platform so it stops in front of Connie. You can undo actions you perform using the left button, but it won't undo the time that has passed. So it's better to use the retake button to undo animations. Move the floating ledge from the upper platform down to Connie. Don't worry if the animation's too slow or too fast. We can fix that later. Make sure you press the stop recording button when you're done. Spend a little time practicing with the action recorder. In the next step, I'll show you how to tweak your animation.
Did I stop recording? What happened? Okay. I kind of screwed it up. Let's do this again here. Okay. Let's go to here. Crabs. Alright, let's just move on. I'll figure it out.
Another way to edit animations is by tweaking them. Hold L1 and press square over the action recorder gadget to open its tweak menu. Here you can see all the tweaks for the action recorder. By default, the playback mode is set to loop, so it plays the animation over and over again. But you can set them to play once, sustain, or to ping pong. Once will play the whole animation only one time. Sustain will play the animation as long as the action recorder has power. If it loses power, it will stop. Then it will continue from that point when it's powered again. Ping pong plays the animation forward once, and then plays it back in reverse. Then forward, then backwards, and so on and so forth. That sounds like a good option for our floating ledge. Select ping pong with X. Click R3 to play the scene and the animation. You can also change the animation's speed to make it slower or faster. Grab the slider with X and use your IMP to change the speed.
Let's go fast.
If you want to explore more of the action recorder tweaks, you can. If you hover over any button for a few seconds, a more info tip will explain what that tweak does.
Let's try it.
To close the tweak menu, just hold L1 and press circle anywhere over it. And
I
of
want a
course you
circle.
can undo any changes you make by pressing the left directional button. Switch to play mode to test your changes. When you're ready, come back to edit mode and start the next step.
Let's go.
Now that Connie's made it up to the higher platform, how will she get back down to the next one? Rewind the scene with L3. You probably already know about cloning objects, but do you know you can clone their animations along with them? I'm sure you remember how to clone, but if not, just hold L1 and grab the animated ledge with R2. Once you've made the clone, release L1. Then move the ledge to the other side of the platform and release R2 to place it. Not only did you clone the ledge, but you also cloned its animation. Click R3 to play the scene. Now we just need to flip it so it moves in the correct direction. First, make sure you rewind your scene. Grab the platform with R2. Then click L3 to flip it horizontally. Depending on where you grabbed it from, you might have to move it closer to the other platform after flipping. Release R2 to put it back down. Now click R3 and the platform should move in opposite directions. Both animations are stored to the same action recorder. So if you retake or delete the action recorder, it will affect both animations. Now go into play mode and see if Connie can make it across both gaps. Switch back to edit mode when you're ready to move on.
Okay, so we got all the way here, but we can't quite get up there. So let's move on.
Now let's get Connie to Cuthbert, and through the door before Cuthbert gets lonely. There's a shiny helper cube holding up the next platform, but he's not very animated at the moment.
This guy right here.
To get him to walk back and forth towards the exit, we need to use record possession. It allows you to possess puppets and record a performance with them. Go to the assembly menu, then the animate menu. Select record possession. It's the one with the sock puppet icon. Your imp can now possess the puppets in the scene. In the context menu, you'll see the count in button. When this is selected, you'll get a 3-second count in before recording starts. Press R2 over the helper cube to possess the puppet and start the countdown. When the count reaches 0, the possession recorder begins recording. Unlike the action recorder, it records constantly, so time will be recorded even when the cube isn't moving. Walk the helper cube around the obstacles. Pause for a moment, turn around, then walk back to where the helper cube started. Starting and ending at the same place will make the animation loop smoothly. Press circle to depossess. You'll notice the recording pauses when you depossess. Select Stop Recording in the context menu to exit record possession.
Just did that.
Once you've stopped recording, click L3 to rewind the scene, then R3 to play it back. In the last step, I'll show you how to edit the recorded possession.
So I did pretty bad there. Probably fall off if I try to do that. So it'll help us edit it, make it better.
A possession recorder gadget has appeared next to the helper cube.
It's right here.
This gadget appears the moment you press the stop recording button when using record possession. Select it with X to see the animation path. The possession recorder gadget also lets you edit and tweak the animation. Hold L1 and press X over the possession recorder to edit it.
L1, X.
Just like the action recorder, you can choose to retake the animation by selecting the button in the context menu. To stop editing the possession recorder, select Stop Recording in the context menu, or hold L1 and press circle to quickly scope out.
Let's redo it.
You can also tweak the possession recorder with L1 and square. It has exactly the same options as the action recorder. Experiment with the recorder and the different tweaks. Remember, you can see more info about the tweak option by hovering over them for a few seconds. Close the tweak menu by pressing L1 and circle anywhere over it. Once you're done editing, switch over to play mode to test out the completed scene.
Okay, we're going to pause it real quick. We're going to retake this guy's animation. So just chill there for a sec. Go nice and easy. Nice and easy. Okay, stop recording. Now let's play. Okay, let's try it out. Play mode. Come on back. Nice and easy. Whoa, didn't mean to jump like that. Come on, there we go. Yay! We did it. Get to the exit. Nice. Well done. You can visit that anytime. Let's back out. So we finished that, and now we're on to keyframes and timelines in the animation tutorials. Ooh, there's a lot of them. Creating keyframes, triggering a keyframe, smoothing keyframes, multiple objects keyframes, keeping keyframe animation changes, creating timelines, animating keyframes on a timeline, changing keyframe durations, setting up a timeline to loop.
In this tutorial, you'll master making basic animations with keyframes and timelines. You might be able to animate wobbly platforms with the action recorder, but keyframes is where animation gets serious. A keyframe records any changes you make to an object, like its position, its tweak menu settings, or anything else you can think of. Then it stores those changes in a gadget you can switch on and off. Alright then, let's use keyframes to help Connie get across those platforms. Go to the assembly menu, press square if it isn't already open, and head to the animate menu. The animate icon is a clapperboard, that thing they use in movies before the director says action. You get to be the director now, and you can use these tools and gadgets to animate things. Start by selecting the keyframe, which is the one with the diamond and the plus sign, and stamp it in the scene above the first gap. You'll notice there's now a red record button in the context menu, and that your imp has turned into a red keyframe. That means the keyframe is recording any changes you make in the scene. But unlike the action recorder, it only records the state of things, not a period of time. It's probably easier to understand if we put it into practice. Let's try it out on the block on the ground in front of Connie. If you grab it with R2 and place it between the first two platforms, you'll see some dashed lines appear on the block, which tells you that the keyframe has recorded the change you've made to the object. You can move it as many times as you want, but it will only record your last change. If that's not the one you want to keep, you can always undo the last change with the left directional button. The next bit is super important. To finish and store your changes in the keyframe, you need to select the Stop Recording button in the context menu. Select it now and see what happens. That's right, the block has snapped back to its original position. That's because the keyframe isn't active right now. But we can still see what it's recorded by selecting it with X. There, the block is back to where you moved it. You'll notice the keyframe doesn't record how things moved, just where they moved to. Make sure you deselect the keyframe before moving on. You can do that by pressing circle. In the next step, I'll show you how to use your keyframe in the scene.
Okay. Keyframes.
Now you've recorded a keyframe, let's see how we can activate it. See the trigger zone above the first platform? Select it with X to check its area of effect. OK, looks like the zone stretches across the whole gap. Deselect it with circle. Then use the sticks or the grab cam to move in closer to the gadget. You'll notice an output port on its side labelled Detected, which is what sends a signal when it detects a possessed puppet like Connie. We need to connect this to the keyframe, so select the port with R2 or X to create a wire. Then stretch it over to the keyframe gadget with your imp. Once you connect the wire to the keyframe's power port, the trigger zone's signal will be able to switch on the keyframe when it detects Connie. Try it out in play mode now by pressing the Options button and selecting the controller icon. See? As soon as Connie enters the trigger zone area, the block springs up into place. It works well enough, but the animation is a bit fast, don't you think? We can do something about that after you take Connie across. Head back into edit mode. Rewind the scene with L3 and I'll show you how to add smoothing to the keyframe in the next step.
Moving on.
Alright then, we've made a simple keyframe animation, but it's time to smooth it out and make it look better. Like almost everything in Dreams, keyframes can be tweaked. So open this one's tweak menu by holding L1 and pressing square over it.
L1 and square.
You'll see two sliders at the bottom called slow power up and slow power down, which determine how long it takes for the keyframe to turn on fully. Hover over the slow power up slider now and hold X. Then move your imp to the right to increase the value. Let's set it to 1 second for now. You can set slow power down to whatever value you like. Then close the tweak menu by selecting the cross icon in the corner or hold L1 over the menu, then press circle. Let's see what that looks like in play mode. Ah yes, that looks a lot smoother. If you're happy with the new animation, switch back to edit mode. Rewind the scene with L3 and move on to the next step.
Move on.
Looks like the bridge across the next gap has collapsed. We could just move it back into place, but where's the fun in that? Let's perform a little bit of magic instead. Go to the Assembly menu and select another keyframe from the Animate menu. Stamp it above the gap with R2 or X. Now see if you can reassemble the bridge, grabbing the first part and moving it back where it should be. One of the great things about keyframes is that they can affect multiple objects. So you can put the other half of the bridge back too. Before selecting Stop Recording from the Context menu to store your changes. Once recording stops, the bridge will go back to its original position. So select the keyframe with X to see those changes again. I could have done a better job at positioning the bridge. Nothing to worry about, because editing a keyframe couldn't be easier. Just select the Edit Keyframe button in the Context menu, which has the same icon as the keyframe gadgets. And you can make changes to the keyframe position again. You can remove things from a keyframe by pressing triangle over them. And now the bridges are back on the ground. Let's put them back into place, but this time make sure they're a bit straighter. Remember, when you're grabbing things, you can realign them by pressing triangle. There we go, much better. You can select Stop Recording again to finish editing this keyframe, and move on to the next step when your bridge is in place.
I say good enough.
The bridge's new position is already stored in the keyframe, so all we need now is a way to activate it, which is where this trigger zone will come in handy. Let's select it to see what zone it covers. It's not in the gap this time, it's over this button, but we'll deal with that later. First, create a wire from the trigger zone's output with R2 or X. Then stretch it over to the keyframe and connect it to its power ports. When Connie steps on the button now, the keyframe will be switched on. But what happens once she leaves the trigger zone? Let's test it in play mode to find out. Just as I thought, when Connie moves away, the keyframe switches off. Let's head back to edit mode and see what we can do about that. Of course, we could just move the trigger zone into the gap, but this is an animation tutorial. So let's see if we can use the keyframes tweak menu to fix the problem. Open it now with the L1 and square shortcut, and have a look at all the options there. Hovering over the buttons will bring up their names, and the one we're interested in is called Keep Changes. With this option turned on, any changes that animation makes will be permanent. So once Connie activates the keyframe, the bridge will stay in its new position until you rewind the scene. Since we're already in the tweak menu, let's also add some smoothing to that animation. I think I'll set it to 2 seconds this time. Okay, time to close the tweak menu with L1 and circle, and try out these changes in play mode. How's that for a magic trick? You can switch back to edit mode, rewind the scene, and experiment with the keyframe to see what else you can do. You could try keyframing a tweak menu setting, or animating some elements from the tutorial collection. When you're done, move on to the next step, and I'll show you how to use keyframes on a timeline.
Keyframes on a timeline.
Keyframes are great for making simple animations, but if you want to make something more complex, you need a timeline. See that little floating block between the last two platforms? Let's use keyframes on a timeline to animate it. Start by selecting a timeline from the Animate menu and stamping it down somewhere around the last gap. Then you can use Circle to unequip the gadget. Now open the timeline, holding L1 over it, then pressing X.
L1.
This is the timeline canvas.
X.
You can move the canvas with your imp by grabbing it with R2.
Holding R2.
The numbers along the top are seconds, and you can see it's set to 8 seconds by default. If you grab the edges with X, you can extend or shorten the canvas. Try setting it to around 6 seconds now. If you ever need extra space to add more things, you can also grab the bottom of the timeline. Once you're comfortable moving and resizing the timeline canvas, move on to the next step and we'll start adding things to it.
Timeline.
It's time to animate the floating block. So get a new keyframe from the Animate menu and stamp it in the scene. Now grab and move the block to its starting position, at the edge of the platform where Cuthbert is waiting. Once the block is in place, you must press the Stop Recording button in the context menu. Now grab the keyframe gadget and move it over the timeline. The gadget will snap to it. Place it at the very start of the timeline. Then get another keyframe from the Animate menu. We'll use this one to record the block's second position. This time, stamp the keyframe directly onto the timeline, at around the 2-second mark, on the same row as the first keyframe. Now move the floating block to the opposite side of the gap, then stop recording. Hover over the timeline canvas and play controls will appear. Using these controls, you can preview just the timeline, without playing the rest of the scene. Select the play button to preview your animation. As you can see, gadgets are only active when the timeline's playhead is over them. So when neither of the keyframes is switched on, the block goes right back to its original position. Now we edit the animation, so the first keyframe blends into the second one. To do that, open the first keyframe's tweak menu with L1 and square. Now that the keyframe is on a timeline, the buttons that were grayed out before are available. These are the blend types, and they change how one keyframe merges into the next. Select the linear button, which will blend to the next keyframe at a constant speed. If you press the timeline's play button now, you'll see the platform move smoothly between the keyframed positions. Feel free to try out other blend types and see how that affects the animation. Then move on to the next step when you're ready.
Move on.
We've got the platform moving smoothly, but we can still improve how it works. Let's start by making it wait for a moment at the start and finish, so Connie has an easier time getting on. All we have to do is scale the keyframes on the timeline so that they take up more time. You might want to get up close to the first keyframe before we start. Now, with your imp over the keyframe, hold the up directional button to extend it. Then do the same with the second keyframe. Now that the keyframes are longer, the blend has become quicker. You can see it for yourself by selecting the play button under the timeline. If you want to scale a keyframe more precisely, you can do that with their trim handles. Those are the dotted lines on the beginning and ends of the keyframes. Grab them with R2 now to give it a try. We should get the platform back to where it started now, but instead of adding a new keyframe, we're going to clone the first one. You remember how to clone things, right? Just hold L1 and grab the first keyframe with R2. Now drag it past the second keyframe and place it by releasing R2. Now we just need to add the blending between the last two keyframes. Only this time, we'll use a shortcut instead of the tweak menu. Just hover over the space between those keyframes, then hold L1 and press X. There you go, one linear blend added. You can even cycle through different blend types by keeping L1 held and pressing X again. Aren't shortcuts great? Use the play controls on the timeline to preview the animation. Move on to the final step when you're ready to continue.
Final step, let's go.
Now, because there's some timeline left at the end where none of the keyframes are active, the platform just snaps right back to its original position. There's a few ways we could fix this. For example, we could shorten the timeline, so there's no gap at the end. We could lengthen the keyframe animation, so it fills up the whole timeline. Or we could turn on keep changes in the last keyframe, which we can do in its tweak menu. The last step is tweaking the timeline itself. So hold L1 anywhere over it, then press square to see all the timeline's options. The playback speed makes it go faster or slower. But what we're interested in right now is the playback mode. When it's set to once, the whole timeline will play once when it's powered, even if it was only powered for a split second. When it's set to sustain, it will only play when it has constant power, stopping when it loses power, then resuming from that point if it's turned on again. And if it's set to loop, it will repeat over and over as long as it has power. That sounds like the best option for this timeline, so select that one. Okay, looks like we're good to go. You can close the timeline now by selecting the cross icon in the top right corner or holding L1 over it, then pressing circle. Click L3 to rewind the scene and test out the changes in play mode. When you're happy with everything, exit through the door to complete this tutorial.
Didn't do something right. Well, I didn't properly do it, but the info was there. Boop-a-doop-a-doop-boo. Keyframes and timelines tutorial completed. Very good. So that was animation tutorials, possession recorders, keyframes, timelines. And we also did the gameplay tutorial, which had connectors and physics. And maybe we'll just keep doing two at a time. Part one was these two, we just did those two. And we have two left. So we'll finish with that. Thanks for watching, I hope you learned something. Part 3 will be audio and art, which I'll do tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Take care.